Hello, this movie is for solving quadratic equations, and I'll refresh your brain on how to do that from Algebra 1, as well as take you to how to use that in geometry. So this is in your student notes packet, and we are going to solve a quadratic equation. I'll remind you what that is and how to solve it. And a quadratic equation is when you have an x squared term and an x term. So we look over here, y equals, this is our general quadratic equation, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. We can solve that graphically looking at where the parabola is crossing the x-axis. These would be our solutions, our roots, our zeros. And that's what we're trying to find, is when we solve this equation for what x is, that's what we're solving for, is when y is 0 and the x-axis is when y is 0. We could use math only if there is no middle term. If we have an x squared term and a constant, we could just use math. Or we could use a quadratic formula, which works all the time, and that's the one that I have highlighted in these notes. And I'm going to show you a shortcut with that. You can use factoring if your a is equal to 1 and it seems easy to look at and factor. But there's a fifth way, and we're going to use an app. We're going to use an app that you find on your graphing calculator, and I'm going to show you how to do that. If, as you watch this movie, you do not have this app on your calculator, we will need to update your operating system. So you'll need to let me know if you don't have this app. So the standard form for a quadratic equation is here. This is the quadratic formula, and you might remember that from Algebra 1, where a is the coefficient of the x squared term, b is your coefficient of the x term, and c is your constant. We learned about a discriminant in Algebra 1, and sometimes there's two solutions to a quadratic. X equals two different values. Sometimes there's no solutions, no real solutions, I should say. Especially if you're in Algebra 2, you talked about imaginary solutions, no real solutions, and sometimes it's 0, meaning there's one solution when the discriminant is 0. Let's take this example. First of all, what makes this a quadratic equation? And the answer to that is because you have an x squared term. Now here is your a, your b, and your c, and I would normally take you through this, but we're not going to solve it by quadratic formula. We're going to use an app. And the app is on your graphing calculator. So I'm going to show you how to use that app. Let's see, we've got here, you can see my TI-84. We're going to use an app. So you go to apps, APPS, click that on your calculator. This has to be a graphing calculator. Now you see on the app where it says PlySmlt 2. For me, it's number 9. If you have a graphing calculator that's just a few years old, then you'll probably also have it in number 9. So I'm pressing 9. And then it's a polynomial root finder because we're finding the roots, the solutions, the zeros. So I'm going to type 1. Make sure the order is 2. Make sure you have real. And if you want to change any of these, you just arrow down and arrow over and then press enter. So if I wanted this to become automatic, you press enter. So let's make sure that you have them set like this. And then we're going to go to next. Now next is right above the graph button. So we're going to press graph. And you'll see that it's a polynomial. And we're going to input our a, b, and c. So in our first instance, we had a is 2, so we're going to type 2, enter. And then we had 2x squared plus 4x, so we're going to do plus, enter, 4, enter. And then we had minus 7, so minus, enter, 7, enter. This quadratic equation should look exactly like the one we have on our paper. And it does. So what we're going to do now is have the calculator solve for us. Solve is right above graph, so we press graph. And it gives us these two solutions, 1.121 and negative 3.121. Those are our two solutions. So when we go back to our paper, The app is PlySmlt, and we get 2 solutions. And that's all you have to do. So you're basically just using your app. Whenever you get a quadratic, we're going to use that app to solve it. All right, we're going to use that app to solve this quadratic equation. We'll start with this input. So turn to this on your student notes. We've got 0 equals 4x squared minus 3x plus 6. We got to get that on our graphing calculator. So I'm going to go back to the graphing calculator. And the next thing we want to do is we're going to quit this second mode quits. And we go back to our beginning screen. So we're going to polynomial root finder, press 1. Then we're going to go to next, which is graph. And we're going to put our new equation in, which is 4x squared. So we do 4, enter, minus 3x, so minus, enter, 3, enter, plus 6, plus, enter, 6, enter. And double check that we have it to look exactly like what we have on the paper. And then we go to solve, which is right above graph, so we press graph. No real roots found. This means no solution, at least not in the real number solution. So we go back to this, and we put no real solution. Graphically, this is telling us that the parabola does not cross the axis. So potentially it's doing this, and you can see where our graph is not crossing the x-axis, so we get no solution here. Let's go to the next page. And we're going to try this out with a triangle. I'm going to show you how this relates to geometry. And then you can apply the quadratics. So we've got 2 triangles. Given similar triangles, solve for x. This 2x minus 4 is a corresponding side with the 24. And 39 is a corresponding side with the x plus 6. So I'm going to set this up as 2x minus 4 is to 24 as, and I went this direction, so I need to stay that direction, 39 is to x plus 6. I'm going to cross multiply here, so I get 39 times 24 equals, and I've got x plus 6 times 2x minus 4. Now I've got a binomial times a binomial over there. I'm going to multiply these guys out. That gives me 936. And then I got to distribute that x in. 2x squared minus 4x. Then I've got to distribute the 6 in. That's how you do a binomial times a binomial. 12x. And then minus 24. Now I'm going to add all my like terms together. And then these two added together give me 8. Now, this is a quadratic. I'm going to have it equal to 0, so I got to subtract 936 on both sides. So I get 0 equals 2x squared, always has to be equal to 0, plus 8x minus 960. This is my quadratic equation. So pull out your graphing calculator. Let's use PlySmlt to get our 2 answers. So keep that equation in front of you. We're going back to our graphing calculator. We're going to do second quit to get out of this. We're going to do polynomial root finder number 1. We're going to do next graph. And let's put in our equation, which was a 2x squared, so 2 enter, plus 8x, so plus enter, 8 enter, and then minus 960, so minus enter, 960, enter. Double check that that matches our quadratic equation. It does, and then we want to solve it. We have 2 solutions, 20 and negative 24. So we're going to use those 2 solutions. here. Now, one of these is going to work, the other one is not. If I plug in negative 24, you can see in this side length it does not work because I get a negative length for a side. So this answer will not work for this problem. So my only answer is when x is 20, these two triangles will be similar. Okay. This next problem, I'll help you set it up. This whole length here, you got to keep in mind, is 10 plus x, or x plus 10. I want you to set up your proportion, solve, and input your quadratic equation into your calculator using PlySmlt and give me two answers and analyze. See if they both work. Pause the movie, try that on your own, press play when you finish. All right, in setting up your proportion might be different than this one. I'm going to write out what I have. However, the cross product should be the same. So you should have 10 times x plus 14 equal to x plus 10 times x plus 2. Now that simplifies, I'll spare you all my algebra, simplifies to the quadratic equation 0 equals x squared plus 2x minus 120. And that quadratic equation you put into PlySmlt and you get two answers. X equals 10, x equals negative 12. Let me write that better. And when I plug negative 12 in, I get a negative side length, so I know that that won't work. So my only answer is 10. That's all for this movie. Make sure that you know how to use your graphing calculator. If not, make sure you check with me.